we're going to continue with City of Ember. One of the drawings had fallen to the floor. Lena retrieved it and pinned it back up. She stood for a minute and looked at the pictures over and over. She'd drawn the same city. Sometimes she drew it as she'd seen from afar. Sometimes she chose one of its buildings and drew it in detail. She put in stairways and street lamps and carts. Sometimes she tried to draw the people who lived in the city, though she wasn't good at drawing people. Their heads always came out too small, and their hands looked like spiders. One picture showed a scene in which the people of the city greeted her when she arrived. The first person they had ever seen to come from elsewhere. They argued with each other about who should be the first to invite her home. Lena could see the city so clearly in her mind she almost believed it was real. She knew it couldn't be, though. The book of the City of Ember, which all children studied in school, taught otherwise. The City of Ember was made for us long ago by the builders, the book said. It is the only light in the dark world. Beyond Ember, the darkness goes on forever in all directions. Lena had been to the outer border of Ember. She had stood at the edge of the trash heaps and gazed into the darkness beyond the city, the unknown regions. No one had ever gone far into the unknown regions, or at least no one had ever gone far and returned. And no one had ever arrived in Ember from unknown regions either. As far as anyone knew, the darkness did go on forever. Still, Lena wanted the other city to exist. In her imagination, it was so beautiful and it seemed so real. Sometimes she longed to go there and take everyone in Ember with her. But she wasn't thinking about the other city now. Today she was happy to be right where she was. She sat Poppy on the couch. "Wait there," she said. She went into the kitchen, where there was an electric stove and a refrigerator that no longer worked, and was used to store glasses and dishes so Poppy couldn't get at them. Above the refrigerator were shelves holding more pots and jars, more spoons and knives, a wind-up clock that Granny always forgot to wind, and a long row of cans. Lena tried to keep the cans in alphabetical order so she could find what she wanted quickly, but Granny always messed them up. Now she saw there were beans at the end of the row and tomatoes at the beginning. She picked out a can labeled baby drink and a jar of boiled carrots, opened them, poured the liquid into a cup and the carrots into a little dish, and took these back to the baby on the couch. Poppy dribbled baby drink down her chin. She ate some of her carrots and poked others between the couch cushions. For the moment, Lena felt almost perfectly happy. There was no need to think about the fate of the city right now. Tomorrow she'd be a messenger. She wiped the orange goop off Poppy's chin. "Don't worry," she said. "Everything will be all right." The messenger's headquarters was on Clothing Street, not far from the back of the gathering hall. When Lena arrived the next morning, she was greeted by Messenger Captain Alice Fleary, a bony woman with pale eyes and hair the color of dust. "Our new girl," said Captain Fleary to the other messengers. A cluster of 9 people who smiled and nodded at Lena. "I have your jacket right here," said the captain. She handed Lena a red jacket like the one all the messengers wore. It was only a little too large. From the clock tower of the gathering hall came a deep, reverberating bong. 8 o'clock, cried Captain Fleary. She waved a long arm. "Take your stations." As the clock sounded 7 more times, the messengers scattered in all directions. The captain turned to Lena. "Your station," she said, "is Garn Square." Lena nodded and started off, but the captain caught her by the collar. "I haven't told you the rules," she said. She held up a knobby finger. 1. When a customer gives you a message, repeat it back to make sure you have it right. 2. Always wear your red jacket so people can identify you. 3. Go as fast as possible. Your customers pay 20 cents for every message, no matter how far you have to take it. Lena nodded. "I always go fast," she said. 4. The captain went on. Deliver a message only to the person it's meant for. No one else. Lena nodded again. She bounced a little on her toes, eager to get going. Captain Fleary smiled. "Go," she said, and Lena went off. She felt strong and speedy and sure-footed. She glanced at her reflection as she ran past the window of a furniture repair shop. She liked the look of her long hair flying out behind her, her long legs in their black socks, and her flapping red jacket. Her face, which had never seemed especially remarkable, looked almost beautiful because she was so happy. As soon as she came into Garn Square, a voice cried, "Messenger!" Her first customer. It was old Natty Prine, calling to her from the bench where she always sat. "This goes to Ravenette Parsons, 18 Silverstone Square," he said. "Bend down." She bent down so that her ear was close to his whiskery mouth. The old man said in a slow, hoarse voice, "My stove is broke. Don't come for dinner. Repeat." Lena repeated the message. "Good," said Natty Prine. He gave Lena 20 cents and she ran across the city to Silverstone Square. There she found Ravenette Parsons, also sitting on a bench. She recited the message to him. "Old turnip head," he growled. "Lazy old flea face. He just doesn't like cooking." No reply. Lena ran back to Garden Square, passing the group of believers on the way. They were standing in a circle, holding hands, singing one of their cheerful songs. It seemed to Lena there were more believers than ever these days. What they believed in, she didn't know. But it must make them happy. They were always smiling. Her next customer turned out to be Mrs. Polster, the teacher of the 4th-year class. In Mrs. Polster's class, they memorized passages from the book of the City of Ember every week. Mrs. Polster had charts on the walls for everything, with everyone's name listed. If you did something right, she made a green dot by your name. If you did something wrong, she made a red dot. "What you need to learn, children," she said in her resonant, precise voice, "is the difference between right and wrong in every area of life. And once you learn the difference," here she would stop and point to the class, and the class would finish the sentence. "You must always choose the right." In every situation, Mrs. Polster knew what the right choice was. Now here was Mrs. Polster again, looming over Lena and pronouncing her message. "To Anisette Lefrand, 39 Hum Street, as follows," she said. "My confidence in you has been seriously diminished since I heard about the disreputable activities in which you engaged on Thursday last. Please repeat." It took Lena 3 tries to get this right. "Uh-oh, a red dot for me," she said. Mrs. Polster did not seem to find this amusing. Lena had 19 customers that first morning. Some of them had ordinary messages. "I can't come on Tuesday. Buy a pound of potatoes on your way home. Please come and fix my front door." Others had messages that made no sense to her at all, like Mrs. Polster's. But it didn't matter. The wonderful part about being a messenger was not the messages, but the places she got to go. She could go into the houses of people she didn't know, and hid in alleyways and little rooms in the backs of stores. In just a few hours, she discovered all kinds of strange and interesting things. For instance, Mrs. Sample, the mender, had to sleep on her couch because her entire bedroom, almost up to the ceiling, was crammed with clothes to be mended. Dr. Felina Tower had the skeleton of a person hanging against her living room wall, its bones held in place by black strings. "I study it," she said when she saw Lena staring. "I have to know how people are put together." A house on Calouse Street, Lena delivered a message to a worried-looking man whose living room was completely dark. "I'm saving on light bulbs," the man said. And when Lena took a message to the Can Cafe, she learned that on certain days the back room was used for a meeting place for people who like to converse about great subjects. "Do you think an invisible being is watching over us all the time?" she heard someone ask. "Perhaps," answered someone else. There was a long silence, and then again, perhaps not. All of it was interesting. She loved finding things out, and she loved running. And even by the end of the day, she wasn't tired. Running made her feel strong and big-hearted. It made her love the places she ran through and the people whose messages she delivered. She wished she could bring all of them the good news they so desperately wanted to hear. Late in the afternoon, a young man came up to her, walking with sort of a sideways lurch. He was an odd-looking person. He had a very long neck with a bump in the middle, and teeth so big they looked as if they were trying to escape from his mouth. His black, bushy hair stuck out from his head in untidy tufts. "I have a message for the mayor at the gathering hall," he said. He paused to let the importance of this be understood. "The mayor," he said. "Did you get that?" "I got it," said Lena. "All right, listen carefully. Tell him, delivery at 8 from Looper." Repeat it back. "Delivery at 8 from Looper," Lena repeated. It was an easy message. "All right, no answer required." He handed her 20 cents and she sprinted away. The gathering hall occupied one entire side of Harkin Square, which was the city's central plaza. The square was paved with stone, It had a few benches bolted to the grounds here and there, as well as a couple kiosks for notices. Wide steps led up to the gathering hall, and fat columns framed its big door. The mayor's office was in the gathering hall. So were the offices of the clerks who kept track of which buildings had broken windows, what street lamps needed repair, and the number of people in the city. There was the office of the timekeeper, who was in charge of the town clock, and there were offices of the guards who enforced the laws of Ember. Now and then putting pickpockets or people who got in fights into the prison room, a small one-story structure with a sloping roof that jutted out from one side of the building. Lena ran up the steps through the door into a broad hallway. On the left was a desk, and at the desk sat a guard. Barton Snod, assistant guard, set a badge on his desk. He was a big man with wide shoulders, brawny arms, and a thick neck, but his head looked as if it didn't belong to his body. It was small and round and topped with a fuzz of extremely short hair. His lower jaw jutted out and moved a little from side to side, as if he were chewing on something. When he saw Lena, his jaw stopped moving for a moment, and his lips curled upward into a very small smile. "Good day," he said. "What business brings you here today?" "I have a message for the mayor." Very good, very good." Barton Snod heaved himself to his feet. "Step this way." He led Lena down the corridor and opened a door marked reception room. "Wait here, please," he said. "The mayor's in the basement office on private business, but he will be up shortly." Lena went inside. "I'll notify the mayor," said Barton Snod. "Please have a seat. The mayor will be right with you, or pretty soon." He left, closing the door behind him. A second later, he reopened again, and the guard's small, fuzzy head reappeared. "What is the message?" he asked. "I have to give it to the mayor in person," said Lena. Of course," said the guard. The door closed again. He doesn't seem very sure about things, Lena thought. Maybe he's new at his job. The reception room was shabby, but Lena could tell that it had once been impressive. The walls were dark red with brownish patches where the paint was peeling away. In the right-hand wall was a closed door. An ugly brown carpet lay on the floor, and on it stood a large armchair covered in itchy-looking red material, and several smaller chairs. The small table held a teapot and some cups, and a larger table in the middle of the room displayed a copy of the Book of the City of Ember, lying open as if someone were trying to read from it. Portraits of all the mayors of the city since the beginning of time hung on the walls, staring solemnly from behind pieces of old window glass. And that's where we're going to pause today.